And the question really there, I think, is what is your theology
Mm.
in terms of AI and divinity? Do you believe that God can use technology for his good and his purpose? If you don't believe so, and that you are somehow separating out and containing technology and AI separate from God's domain and his work, then that's where you start to go down the path of man versus machine, Terminator, Skynet, right? Like we have to contain it. Now, if you go on the other side and realize that there might be divinity in the digital, then it opens up all this possibilities. It doesn't mean that we have to go in wholesale and say yes to everything, but
Right.
it starts to ask those questions. How might we use AI for good? How might we use it responsibly? How might we be a steward of the gift of technology that God has given us?
Well, welcome back to another episode of Beyond You. Today I'm joined with my co-host, Ben Rotz. Ben, glad you're here. It's good to have you on
Good
again.
morning, Torrey. Great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, today's conversation is an exciting one, and I think we're all going to learn a lot. We are joined by Kenny Jahng, and we're going to have a conversation about AI today, artificial intelligence. It's important to know before we invite Kenny to this conversation today, Kenny he has a resume, and he brings to us a wealth of knowledge and experience in the world of AI. He's the founder and CEO of Big Click Syndicate. He's also the founder of AI for Church Leaders. He's got his MBA in strategic marketing and entrepreneurial leadership from Columbia Business School. So when I say this guy has a resume, he has a resume. So Kenny, we're so glad that you're here. Thanks for joining this conversation. We can't wait to learn from you.
Oh, excited to be here. As you can tell, I collect a lot of paper.
Oh, that's awesome. So, Kenny, today our conversation about AI, man, there's so many directions that we can kind of take this conversation, but today we want to really dive into your area of expertise with AI, generative AI to be more specific. Can you give us some sort of a basic understanding? What is generative AI?
Yeah, we've been um, using AI across all these things in our life already. Whether you're using GPS or you're using Netflix for your Netflix queue, or product recommendations from Amazon that magically know what you want to buy next. So AI is all around us. But what has happened back in late 22 is that a company called OpenAI came out with something called Chat GPT. And I think hopefully everybody listening in today has heard of Chat GPT. And that ushered in a new era and this new thing called generative AI, or Gen AI, you might hear the nerds talking about, is just something that feels magical. And Cliff Note version is it's all that brainiac, nerdy stuff that AI is, but you don't need a PhD to interface with the machine anymore. On top of it, if you think of maybe slathering a layer of natural language processing, so being able to talk to the machine instead of having to code is the interface now. And so you can type in anything. You're now being able to say anything for voice conversational AI. It does its own nerdy stuff in the background and comes back and gives you the results translated into plain English or plain Spanish or Czechoslovakian or Korean for that matter, because the AI understands multiple languages. So it has just been something that has taken technology and made it accessible across the board. And so it's taken the world by storm. And that's why we're here as church leaders that really need to think about it in ministry, in our own workplaces, in all these different places that now has applicability.
And it's that accessibility that has really become a game changer for so many that leverages platform. And I wonder if we can really talk about some of that nature of its accessibility and as we think of the average user is probably not like you were saying, like the AI nerd, but it's someone that in everyday ministry and everyday life they can leverage this tool. And to your point, it's multilingual, so it knows just a vast array of not only languages but also content. How do you think the average user can effectively use this, like today?
Yeah, the The best way is just to talk to it as if it was a conversation partner. It's called a conversational chatbot for a reason. And I would say the best recommendation is just to try it out. And you can go to Chat GPT, there's Claude, there's Bing, there's Bard. There's a whole bunch of free tools out there. That's absolutely no cost. And I would just say find your with them, the what's in it for me. So you don't need
Mm,
to be all fancy and try to figure out how to optimize your workflows and do something at work. Find a hobby. If it's cooking, ask it for a recipe on your favorite dish. If it's sports, ask it for some tips on the sports that you're trying to do. Just start to have a conversation and see what happens.
It's funny. I just read an article, Kenny, about and maybe you're aware of this, but a new refrigerator. Have you heard about this? There's a new refrigerator that's powered with AI, and I need this in my life because you can put groceries in, and it will capture what you have in the refrigerator, and then spit you out. You can make this for dinner, like all these options for dinner. I mean, you don't have to think; it just kind of reads what's in your refrigerator and can spit it out. So to piggyback on that, for the average listener, right? What kind of differences has AI made in just everyday, ordinary life?
Yeah, I think you're starting to see the initial rollout of AI in businesses, and that means in products and services, in social media. So, for example, Snapchat, rolled out My AI Pal. So that is actually, I believe, the largest conversational partner that Snapchat users are using right now. Both Amazon with Alexa and Google Assistants and Siri, they've all announced that they are going to bring this newfangled large language model, the nerdy term for this Gen AI stuff, to those interfaces. So right now, Siri's kind of not that high IQ. It feels like, right? Alexa, not so much. It's a competition of who gets things wrong the most, right? And so we are now going to see some major upgrades in the next year or two. And that's going to be, on a practical basis, a game changer. But again, I think you're starting to see AI in so many different tools that we use online, whether it's assisting you as a co pilot to create PowerPoint presentations or writing your emails or something as simple as Grammarly. Grammarly is something that every student professional in the office workplace should be using, right? Because it helps you not just do spell check, but I like to joke. My seventh grade English teacher is haunting me over the shoulder all the time because, right? Because I used to get those red marks on the essays all the time. It's like, oh, Kenny, you're not writing in the active voice. It's always in the passive voice, Kenny. And now Grammarly points that out and recommends things. And so I would be a star student in that seventh grade English class now. And so now you're able to present yourself in a much more professional manner, in a much more effective, clear manner with everybody you're writing to. And so there's all these tools I think that's going to proliferate more and more as time marches on.
What interesting conversations we've had just in kind of the evangelical higher education world when it comes to AI, Kenny, is some people say that AI is kind of ushering in the end of the world, right? And that some people see this as the next opportunity for the church. And so how do you navigate those kinds of conversations with church leaders who some, avoid it and think it's inherently evil, some are embracing it and bringing it into the church, right? So how do you help churches and church leaders to navigate that conversation?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that we recognize that the majority of church leaders, pastors, are not AI friendly. There was a survey done by Glue last year, the AI in Church survey, that identified that over three-quarters of pastors do not think that AI will increase the efficacy or efficiency of their work. Whereas in the marketplace, the regular business leaders are adopting AI at breakneck pace. They are trying to figure out how we can use AI in every nook and cranny of their workflows, and yet church leaders are hesitant. I think the number one thing that we can do is just have conversations about our fears, have conversations about the ethics, have conversations, just the questions that you might have about AI, and don't do it in a silo. No one is asking you to be the expert in AI for your own team, your ministry. your department, your business, wherever you are, everyone just needs a conversation host. You just need to facilitate that conversation so that we can advance together.
Well, and so to that point, I think you mentioned an interesting dichotomy that in evangelical circles, especially, and not even just in the church, but even in higher ed, and we'll shift gears into that side of the conversation here in a bit. But there's this: are we going to view AI through the lens of intimidation or through innovation? And there's great opportunity in that. What would you say, like when you think of that statistic that Glue mentioned? You said it's what, 75%?
A little over 75%.
When you engage with folks that would fall in that 75%, what would be the challenge that you would offer them to maybe help them see AI as not something to be intimidated by or to be hesitant about, but rather, man, this is a gateway to innovation. And when we think about advancing the kingdom, this actually could help us in a very practical, real way right now. What would you say to that person that might be hesitant?
Yeah, I think we can go many different ways in the conversation. Choose your own adventure. However, at the end of the day, we end up in the same destination, and that is there is this gate that you have to pass through, and that will determine A or B, red pill or blue pill. And the question really there, I think, is what is your theology
Hmm.
in terms of AI and divinity? Do you believe that there could be any divinity in the digital?
Hmm.
Do you believe that God can use technology for his good and his purpose? If you don't believe so, and that you are somehow separating out and containing technology and AI separate from God's domain and his work, then that's where you start to go down the path of man versus machine, Terminator, Skynet, right? Like we have to contain it. All that kind of narrative is one direction.
Hmm.
I think that's where I say the word of the year this year, Webster should be putting in not FOMO from social media, it's FOLO, fear of looming obsolescence,
Hmm.
right? Fear of looming obsolescence is what's driving all this hesitancy at the end of the day. And I think it's this lack of imagination potentially that we're
Hmm.
saying as church leaders, God does not want us to actually use and harness AI, that God it doesn't understand what AI can do to redeem any part of this world. Now, if you go on the other side and realize that there might be divinity in the digital, then it opens up all this possibilities. It doesn't mean that we have to go in wholesale and say yes to everything, but
Right.
it starts to ask those questions. How might we use AI for good? How might we use it responsibly? How might we be a steward of the gift of technology that God has given us? I think that's where it comes down to at the end of the day.
Well, and I think responsibility is a great word to use in this conversation because there is a necessary element of ethics in this. And so when you think about what it means to use AI responsibly, let's just talk to pastors for a moment. As a pastor, what help us toe that ethical line here for a moment. What would you say falls within responsible use? What would you also maybe categorize as like, hey, that might not fall within the responsible use side of this conversation?
Yeah, one of the, I guess, initial conversation pieces that we typically have is what is your relationship with AI? And I think one of the most helpful things that I've found in terms of when we're coaching individuals or teams, or when we give workshops to teams on AI, is introducing this metaphor of maybe your relationship can be structured with the AI as if it is the smart seminary intern that just showed up at your office, right? So instead of looking at it as like a machine in the public square, like you're going up to like an ATM, you're waiting in line, you get to use it, take the results, and go home off with whatever it spits out. Instead of that type of transactional nature, if you have an intern, let's just talk about what happens with a smart intern. It is very capable, but does it know everything? Does it understand systematic theology and everything that you want to use? No. Does it understand history and have wisdom for decades of experience? No. But it is very well read. If the intern has read 10% of the internet, 20% of the internet, has read every book under the sun, at some point you are able to harness the intellect, the knowledge, and the more importantly the positive attitude that it will just be relentless in trying to support you. Then it becomes a conversation partner. It becomes a co-pilot with what you're trying to do. And so that's the type of thing that I would say we need to start thinking about in terms of what is our relationship with AI. Do you want to hand off something that's important to an intern, let it go off and do it unsupervised and never check up on it? Absolutely not.
Right.
And so I think that's where you start those conversations of what is our relationship with AI?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, I think to that point, Kenny, just to kind of broaden the conversation out. I mean, because it sounds like a lot of AI in the church, it's really an issue of a kind of a theology of technology, right? But also, as Torrey mentioned, an issue of stewardship and responsibility, and this kind of ethically neutral space.
Mhm.
Talk to us about the future, right? So I think we're kind of at the front end of generative AI, and I think it will only continue to grow in our everyday use in church world and beyond. What's some of the capacity? What capacity does AI have to shape the future of the church world? I mean, what are some things that we don't know for sure, but how will this shape the church moving forward?
Yeah, so I just got back from the CES show, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, right? It's a huge conference where all companies and all industries come and show their latest innovations. 130,000 attendees. It's absolutely
Wow.
massive. And AI was all over the place there. Some of the glimpses that I've seen of what's coming on the pike is not this one shot transactional things. It's going to become much more personalized, hyper personalization of being able to understand who you are, what your preferences are, predictive analysis of what you might want or need next. That's going to happen in the church space as well. Imagine if you had, um, again, a co-pilot or an intern that just followed you around all the time and started to understand when you're hangry and say, "Hey, do you need a snack?" Right? When it understands that you are actually going through a lull in terms of mental health and being able to give you some resources, um, actually give you supportive discipleship resources because it understands where you need to grow right now. Those are the types of things that I think is, optimistic in terms of the future of our faith.
Well, and let's pivot that conversation to an even broader scope, a broader scale. When we think about the opportunities in the lens of higher education, I mean, we could have an all day conversation about that. But as you think about some of these new developments with the technology, how does this then translate into the context of where we are right here at Oklahoma Wesleyan, in higher education, specifically Christian higher education? What opportunities are presented in light of all of these developments?
Yeah, I think education is a place where it's going to turbocharge it and actually democratize and give access to world-class education to just much wider spectrum of people. So just in the one little corner of education of assessments, right?
Mm.
We wake up and go to class and we'll take assessments, tests, exams, etc. Because it is the most convenient way to do that in a one-to-many setting for the faculty or the teacher. In an ideal world, you would have one-to-one tutoring, and that assessment may not come at the midterm milestone or the final milestone, right? You might be able to readjust the learning path for students multiple times throughout the course of an academic year or course. And so, again, that personalized support, recommendations, um, figuring out where those gaps are in those nuances. So you might superficially look like you understand a concept, but you not might not have mastered it yet. And so why not use AI to personalize that type of educational support system for every single student out there? I think that's within our reach within the next year or two to start seeing the results of.
Mm.
I think, and I may be prognosticating here a little bit, but it seems like a lot of the education world is adversarial towards AI, right? Because the kind of the presupposition is that students are going to use AI to work around an essay question or cheat somehow, and certainly that could be taking place. But on kind of the leadership side of academia, Ken, I mean, on if you're a professor or a teacher, even for middle school, high school kids, is there a different way to look at AI in the classroom as far as being, it's kind of the wider conversation we've had, but what opportunities or what exists out there for our school leaders, academic leaders, to use this well, right? So you talked about the tutoring side for individuals, but if I'm teaching a class, I mean, how can I harness AI to be a better teacher, to be a better leader, to be a better instructor, whatever that case may be in the world of education?
Yeah, I think a little bit of it, the question or the problem is focusing on the wrong thing. That we are looking at a legacy model of education, and this disruption of AI disrupts the ability for the teacher to measure results and progress and mastery. And maybe if the objectives of education is a little bit different, from a different perspective, you might see this not as a threat, but actually something as an advantage. So, for example, at the very basic level, is the purpose of some class to educate them on the topic or to make them workplace ready, right? Is it to give them the ability to become critical thinkers and um, figure out how to increase and scale their resourcefulness in order to actually get to the outcomes that they're looking for from a business objective? And if you look at it that way, then it becomes a completely different matter. I think this is a similar thing when the internet came about, right? And so before you weren't able to Google answers, and now you are. But yet teachers have worked around that, and I think it's the same thing. AI's quickly becoming normalized. It is the norm in the next year or two in many, I guess, educational settings for students to consult, to use AI tools of a variety of factors. And it's not just Chat GPT, write me an essay to submit for my assignment. There's so many different things that AI will start to be integrated into. And so, how are you able to give your students a head start, a lead over everybody else that's coming out of your classroom so that you're equipping them better so that they look back at the time in the classroom as this has been the most impactful experience that I've had for my future with long term impact?
That's good. When you think about the responsible use of AI, not just with faculty and administration, but also with students, and as it becomes more integrated in every facet of life, not just in education, not just in the church, but really in all of society, I think it's good to talk about parameters and policies, if you will. I know policy can be kind of like a heavy-handed sort of term to use, but but the temptation might be just to, okay, we're going to dive all in, and we kind of create a mess of this new facet of society, AI. Like, what, when you think about, okay, we want to use this responsibly, we want it to be an effective tool, to your point, to help set students up for success in their careers, what sort of parameters, guidelines, policies do you think are helpful to implement, to make sure that we're using it in not only an ethical way, but in a helpful way?
Yeah, one of the biggest recommendations I have right now is that every single organization, and if the organization doesn't adopt it, the team that you're on, whether it be in a school or in the workplace, is to have an AI policy and to understand what is out of bounds and what is okay in your own workflows. So the first one that's easy is attribution. What are you going to do with attribution? Do you actually, whenever you submit any piece of work, whether it's a presentation, whether it's a report, whether it's an article, do you actually note that you actually consulted Google, in internet searches as part of that work? No, because that's normalized and that's assumed. Is AI something that you should actually provide attribution for? I think you have to think through yes or no, and when does that happen? as society and the culture of whatever community that you're in um, embraces AI. So if you're in a bleeding edge innovation culture, I don't think you need to disclose that you're using AI unless it's instructional or there's very specific uses. But if it's a general audience, especially in ministry world, where we know that the most congregation members and pastors and leaders are not for it necessarily or don't have direct experience with it, then it probably makes sense to have some attribution. Attribution doesn't mean it needs to be just a footnote or bibliography. There are so many different ways that you can tackle that. I think the whole point is you don't want to ever hide or be seen as deceptive. And that is the core issue here.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
I just to jump on that for a minute. I mean, and I think I've had a conversation with lots of pastors and even working with students here of, do we use AI to write our sermons? Do we use AI to write an essay? And I mean, we've talked about opportunities, we've talked about innovation, but to that end, when it comes to human responsibility in our relationship with technology, what are some concerns about the future? I mean, the future of AI, and what are some things that you think that maybe we're not thinking about, Kenny, right now that we need to be aware of? And as we develop a theology of technology and as we write AI policy, I mean, talk to us about just some maybe the concerns that you have out there for the future of how we steward AI well.
Yeah, AI is a shiny object right now, right? It's as if when the car was first invented, it can do amazing things, but over time, there's an adoption curve where you start to understand where is it good and where is it not, right? So, for example, um, even though the car is amazing for transportation, it's comfortable, you got climate control inside, right? You got music, it's right. You're not going to use it today to drive half a block to the ice cream shop or the coffee shop on the corner, right? It just is impractical. You could, it does it fantastically, but is that the best way to use it? No. It's the same thing with AI. So I think part of the laboratory of an academic experience should be to really start to understand how we use different technologies in different ways. What are the sweet spots for the tools that we have in front of us? We're giving all of our students a toolbox, whether it be the physical library, internet searches, AI, social media. There's so many different tools at your fingertips. And I think our job is, as leaders, is to really help our communities better understand the nuances of where each tool has the sweet spot.
Well, and I think that there's a necessary element to this conversation that I know I've been tempted in my limited use, I should say, of AI in my work, um, to rely on it as if it's perfect, without flaw, without any error. Can you talk to us a little bit about the gaps in AI right now, as you have either personally experienced it or maybe others? Because I don't want us to also see this as like the magic bullet that it has no error, it has no gaps.
Yeah.
What are some of those gaps that, as we're interacting with it, we just need to be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, there. And I would just make the initial comparison to a Google search. Like we expect AI to be perfect, but think about the internet and Google searches. How often do you search for something and on the first listing, what you need perfectly? It's almost never, right?
Right.
It's like hit and miss, and you got to go back and forth and back and forth and work with it to get what you want. AI is no different. And part of the problem with AI is it is not an actual knowledge engine. It is a language model, meaning it is taking a database of millions and billions of pieces of information of content and just doing predictive analysis of what you would expect based on that big data to deliver sentences back to you, right? So that's on a very basic level. So it is just doing predictive pattern recognition at scale. So when you're asking for a recipe with peanut butter, we know if I said peanut butter and blank,
Yeah.
right? You would probably fill that in with jelly. Well, if you wanted a recipe for something else, sometimes jelly might pop up. We call that a hallucination in this AI world because it is not actually thinking of the concept and thinking of what sounds and what's right, and then delivering the answer. It's just constructing sentences one word at a time, and just continuously going back to the database one at a time. It is able to create sentences that don't make sense or that is just completely factually not true. And so that hallucination is something that's very common, and that is something that you need to fact check all the time. So those types of things are things where it just doesn't work. Um, there's also places where, um, if it's something that has a high risk element, you probably don't want to outsource something
Right.
to the AI, right? So if it's something that's very deeply personal or that has some large consequences, you want to keep a human in the loop because
Right.
AI will get it wrong. And so you want to try to identify those boundaries of where it just really isn't meant for that, or that's not the sweet spot, so that you just have the ability to use backup systems or compensate for it in different ways.
Yeah, that's good. I know one of the newer concepts, Kenny, that's out there is multimodality in AI. Can you talk to us just a little bit about multimodality and some of the implications that come with multimodality?
Yeah. So basically, we started with text inputs and text outputs, right? Chat GPT, you put in a question or a prompt, it does its thing, it comes back with text. And we talked about multilingual. You can ask it to translate things. You can write. You can ask it to read something in another language and give you a summary in your language. So text was the first medium. Uh, what we mean by the term multimodal is just simply there are different form factors of content. So it can now start to do text and images and audio and video, and then a smattering of them all, like a whole potpourri. And so the inputs can be an image. So, for example, you could take a photo of your open refrigerator or all the elements that you have in your kitchen and ask it to identify what's in the photo and say, I'd like to make some meal, 30 minutes or less, come up with some recipe options, right? So it can come back to you with, you started with an image, it can come back to you with text, with an audio narration, it can even come back to you with a video. That's the direction that we're going in, that you're going to be able to feed it any different types of modes of content, text, audio, images, or video, and then the output can be one or a bunch of different ones as well. So that is what we mean by multimodality. That is super powerful, because you're going to have so many different opportunities to put that into work. A simple example is, if you need to fix something, right? Let's just take, for people who are watching this, I have this microphone. If it's not working, I will be able to pretty soon take a picture or video of it, and then the AI is going to be able to identify what model, what actual instrument this is. Oh, this is a external microphone, and then diagnose what's wrong with it, and then maybe step me through troubleshooting as to trying to help it, all from a photo or a video. And so those are the types of powerful things that you're going to start to see happen.
Yeah. So,
Can you? Oh,
I,
go ahead, Ben.
oh,
Sorry.
it's my turn this time. I mean, Kenny, one of the interesting things conversations I've had with people is, again, this kind of anxiety induced, AI is going to take our jobs, right? It's so, I mean, with your microphone, I mean, at what point do we need somebody a microphone repairman anymore? If AI can just tell us, here's the microphone, here's how you
Yeah.
fix it. So I mean, help us with those kinds of conversations. I mean, is that a real possibility that things like that may happen? And I mean, how do we navigate just some of those possibilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, some of the things that's very common to hear in the AI community is that AI is not going to outright take your job immediately. So, in one sense, you're not at risk of losing your job immediately. But at the other sense, what's going to happen is you're going to be replaced by someone who understands how to do your job with AI, right? It's just another skill set and a tool. It's kind of like on a resume. It used to be back in the day, where if you had listed as skills that I know, Microsoft Office, I understand these tools, right? Maybe Photoshop or Adobe Premiere. Like if you understand how to use these tools, you get a leg up versus other candidates who don't. And so being able to use AI is going to have disproportional benefits over people who haven't embraced it yet at all. In terms of the actual risk of losing jobs, I think there actually will be definitely sections or sectors that will be impacted dramatically. But what we've seen with every technology front that has come in, whenever there's innovations, new jobs are formed, right? It just so happens that technology is never that silver bullet that's going to solve everything. So there are new things that pop up that really have a need to be managed, to be augmented, to be facilitated. And so most of the time, pretty much consistently, whenever we have a new innovation front that comes in, it actually opens up more opportunities in terms of economics for new jobs, new roles, new positions. It's your decision, though. Though, are you going to be stuck in the mud and be caught by the disruption, or are you going to embrace it and try to figure out how you might evolve, reposition, reframe, or upskill what you're doing?
Kenny, I'm purely curious here with this question. So it's a personal, like, how does someone like Kenny Jahng, who is like an AI expert, how do you implement AI in your everyday life? Like, how is it integrated into your world? Give us an example or some examples of how you use AI in your everyday life.
Yeah, I'd say first thing, I'm not an expert. How can you be expert on something that has come into being just within the last year or so? Everyone's in the same
Enough.
place, right? It just so happens that I might be one step ahead of trying things out over you. It's really, I think if you're looking at people that are speaking from stages or trying to teach or sell you things, and they are trying to set themselves as that guru expert, I say fooey on that. You can go find some other people that are more down to earth. AI is so early in its rollout in this generative AI format that the public has gotten hold of it much earlier than it usually does with any other technology. So I like to say Apple would not have rolled out Chat GPT, right? Because Apple is known for things that just work, make it drop dead simple, things that don't need an instruction manual, right? Things that are not confusing. That's just intuitive. And that's basically what's happening right now. We're just really, really early on the adoption curve, right? Like the AI doesn't work. We're talking about hallucinations here, and that's the norm. I like to say the AI that you're using today, ChatGPT, Jasper, Claude, Midjourney, all these tools are the worst versions of AI that you'll ever use in the rest of your life, right? It's just they're all improving exponentially across time. Now, in my life, I think it's just experimentation with tools and seeing what works. It's just very selfish. Like, how lazy can you be and see how AI can actually do that? So again, and so I think it's just experimentation, having that willingness to just try new things, and trying, going to webinars, going to workshops. In our AI for Church Leaders community, we have monthly workshops that are very short, very small, very simple, and it's a way for people to just see and test out different things that are coming out. And so I think that mindset is a significant shift for many people, but just that mindset of saying, hey, I'm going to go from intimidation to inspiration is one of the most powerful things that you could do in your daily life. So, um, Grammarly, creating content. So I'll use ChatGPT all the time for creating content. I use Jasper, which is my favorite long form content tool. Content production, whether it's writing articles for churchtechtoday.com or writing white papers or lead magnets or creating presentations or social media. All of that is how I'm using it on a daily basis. Analysis on the business side. So we will actually take a lot of data that is cumbersome and clunky and what you call like, oh, an intern should be doing that type of work, and putting that into a Google Sheet and asking AI to analyze it for you. Because AI is very good at taking unstructured data and finding some sanity and insights and structure and some conclusions out of it. So those are the types of things that I'm using on a daily basis. And then experimenting. Like today I was experimenting with both video as well as image generation because those are the tools that are coming out next.
Wow.
That's really good. We've talked kind of one of the themes throughout the conversation today has been a theology of technology.
Yeah.
Can you give us a peek behind the curtain of your world when it comes, because this is the world in which you live, right? So help us to understand for you, what is your theology of technology when it comes to AI, and how will that translate into leaders today?
Yeah, I'm at a baseline. I think the posture that I have with technology is that God has given us a tool, just like He's allowed us to have hammers and machinery and all these things in our life. God has given us technology as a way for us to till the soil. And so it is a stewardship issue in my mind to say, hey, how do we apply it to what we've been called to? I've been called to in this specific niche to help educate, bring awareness, education, and application of AI in this season. And so, how do I use technology to do that? Whether it is using social media networks like a Facebook group or learning platforms like an LMS that actually you can build courses and workshops, whether it's using Zoom for webinars and consultations, right? We're using technology in the mindset of I want to be a steward of what God has given us to be able to work out my calling that God has given me. And I think that just that posture and that framing of it in our relationship to what we're trying to get out of technology is probably instrumental for a lot of people if they can start to think of it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. This, just appreciate so much, Kenny, your willingness to come on the show today to talk with us about some of these things. I know it's been challenging for me, personally helpful too, just to wrestle with some of these things and all the opportunities. But to recognize at the end of the day, technology is under the dominion of God, right?
Yeah.
Our responsibility is to steward it well. And so thank you for helping us to navigate and to learn more about what that looks like. So, Torrey, anything else for you today?
Kenny, you're brilliant, and we thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your expertise with us, and thanks for helping us frame this conversation with AI, not from a place of fear, but a place of opportunity, and how we can leverage it in our own lives, ultimately to fulfill the purposes that God has for us. So thanks so much, Kenny.
Absolutely. Always glad to be with you guys.